Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Here we are again to have a little chat. In the first two videos that I recorded, I decided to expose all of my frustration and revolt against all the unethical behavior, lack of morality, and corruption in our country. I believe that all of you are disgusted with that. There's something new every day. But when I started recording, I didn't care about how I looked. I was lying in bed. I was trying to get some sleep, and I was really angry. I stood up, and I picked up the camera, and anyway, but it didn't matter to me. I concluded that the good people in general, the good ones, would listen to what I have to say. I was absolutely sure of it, that would happen. It's not that I care about my looks, the way I walk or I do things. They say that looks can be deceiving, right? But words said with clarity and sincerity remain, and they produce a good crop. They produce a sweeter fruit. That's all I want from this. That all the good things that I can bring to you, I hope that this can all be useful so that everybody can grow in every possible way that they can. But in our campaign, there are two major challenges, two huge challenges. The first one is to wake up the good ones, those in silence. It's a dangerous silence. We keep losing ground to the enemies of peace, and they infringe our rights. But we have the Constitution, and we do have rights. Why don't we fight for our rights? And secondly, since I am an ombudsman, I want to promote the growth of our economy and the improvement of the quality of life with education and the practice of ethics at the workplace and in businesses. The certification for ethics will be an acknowledgement for all the good ones. Nowadays, we can't really tell the difference between the good and the bad ones. But if we just keep on living in the same fashion, we would produce nothing. You see, people want to do their best and give their best of themselves. It's the case, for instance, for the lack of ethics and corruption and morality. Many times, the people who are in it are forced to do so just because of the circumstances. They don't really want to. For example, if you go to visit a company and you prepare a price and you have an estimate to show and you try to be fair and comply with the laws and what is fair and what is real, and someone else who wants the deal no matter what and is corrupted, they practice corruption, passively or actively, and end up closing the deal instead of the good. What about them? One time I was talking to one of these good people and he said, "Juranjir, if I tried and listened to your advice to try to be honest and ethical, I would be starving to death today. Maybe I would even be arrested for stealing food. Do you think this is a lie?" It is nothing but the truth. Sometimes when I think back at what happened in my own life and how a company could possibly profit with so much waste of different types, there is even waste in the process of decision making, what I usually call poor choices in making decisions. It's costly, but it's reality. It's hard to keep businesses going nowadays. Both businessmen and manufacturers are living on a tight budget today. And not as huge a budget as you think. We let it be. But to whom can we complain about this? Juranjir, to whom can we complain about it? We have the unions, but corruption is everywhere we look. And we all know and we read about the struggle that is happening in factories and how survival is hard. The employees are fighting each other to have a chance to be able to advance their careers and increase their paychecks. And these circumstances have no ethics whatsoever. If I have some, forget about the other. That's not right. If there are two companies, how is it possible for people to work if they're struggling with it? And if things are uncomfortable at his job, who can he complain to? He needs the job, and he'll be fired if he says something, if he blows the whistle, so to speak. But what can we do about it? This happened to me many times. I remember when I was working on the factory floor. I saw this time and time again. I remember one occasion. I was just operating my machine. It was one of the first ones they ever imported from the United States. I was working for the multinational Caterpillar. I started as a lathe mechanic. But I never did have any accidents in there. I have all my fingers and thumbs. And one day, some new machines were installed, and I was a machine operator. And they told me, look, we have an order here, and it's the first tractor that the company ever made in Brazil. So then, when I started the machine, right off I noticed that something was wrong. It wasn't working. I was following the instructions to manufacture that piece. The instructions came from the US, so we had to follow them. So then I reread the instructions and I looked at the machine and I just knew it wouldn't work. So what did I do? I went to my boss right away and I said, look, if I try and make this piece with this machine, the machine's gonna break down. He said, listen, you dumb idiot. The machine's gonna break down? How can that be? He insulted me because I said I had a feeling that it shouldn't be done that way, and I insisted because I had a feeling that it couldn't be done that way, but he insisted. And so finally I said, call the engineers, and perchance the head engineer was passing by. He was an American guy named Mr. Miller. I called him and said, Mr. Miller, hey, this is not gonna work this way. So I explained it to him and he said, no, American stuff is good, real good. But I insisted that it would not work. If I do it this way, the machine will break. So I asked him once again, are you sure you want me to do it? And he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. I said, well, okay, but it's your call. I'll turn it on, but it's your responsibility. And I want you to be here while I turn it on. So he said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'm sure I'm right. So I went over there to the machine and I pushed the buttons, and then when the parts got closer, when it started to shape the piece that was being made right then in the machine, then bam! I turned back and there was a huge explosion. Can you believe it? It seemed like a grenade had blown up in there. And where was Mr. Miller? I looked around and it was like he had disappeared. I was surprised because I couldn't find him. But when I looked, he was behind another cabinet, and he said to me, well, I guess you were right. And that really helped my career. After that, Mr. Miller would call me every time he had a problem with the engineering or the projects. Any doubts he would have, he would say, go and talk to the boy from Bahia. That guy Jurandir, he knows the answer. Well, you see, if something is wrong and you know it, why should you do it? Because the boss told me to? Because the others have done it before? If it's not right, I'm not going to do it. It's the same thing that happens in our day-to-day lives. It happens in politics and everywhere. People, we have to do what's right. We have to find the courage. I put my job on the line that day by not following orders. And then my boss, he started to pick on me so much that I had to ask to be changed to a different department. It was for the best. So that's why I keep saying and repeating over and over and over. Let's just do what is right. What is right? What is ethical? What is moral? See, we have to remove from our lives anyone who comes up to us with indecent, and dishonest proposals. Indecent. Things that can jeopardize what we are doing in our work because they are dishonest and unethical in our day-to-day lives. Well, the story I've just told you about, I detailed in my book. My book is called Courage and Determination Without Limits. That's what we need. Courage and determination with no limitations. So, we'll see you next time in the next segment, and thank you all until then.